Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. So hello everyone, welcome. To Basics Discussion Circle and Meditation. My name's Travis, I facilitate this group. So tonight we'll be doing some more working the breath throughout the body meditation. It's my go-to, my favorite. At least my favorite to lead in class. Yeah. So we'll be working with that. Afterwards, I may address a question that was asked at the end of last week's class, but the internet cut out, so I was unable to fully answer it. So I'll probably be addressing that after the meditation. Yeah. So just a few things before we get started. When we're doing this type of meditation, we're working with perception. We're working with the sensation of the breath, the sensation of breathing, which is very much this tension relaxing sensation, and we're trying to work it throughout the body. So throughout the meditation, I may say things like breathing in through the eyes and the ears. I'm not suggesting that that's literally what we're doing. It's more of an exercise of perception to, again, work sensation of breath throughout the body. And it's helpful to remember that as we're sitting here breathing, we create a distinction between the sensation of the breath and the bodily sensations. But the sensation of the breath is what's kind of propelling and fabricating the bodily sensations. So at certain points during the meditation, we may find it difficult to work the breath through certain parts of the body, but maybe we're still aware of the sensation in those parts of the body. That's still the breath. That's still breath energy or breath awareness. As long as awareness is present along with sensation, that's breath awareness. So with that, we'll get started. Yeah. Closing the eyes and taking 3 deep breaths slowly. Just noticing if deep breathing feels good for the body in this moment. If it does, you can keep on breathing in this way. If it doesn't, you can switch things up, maybe even deeper still or more shallow. Heavier, lighter. In long, out short. In short, out long. Just playing around and noticing what works best in this moment. working with the breath in this way can grant very valuable insight into how the way that we breathe influences our experience of the present moment. But if this experimentation just seems too involved right now, maybe you've had a stressful day, you can just pose the question in the mind as to what kind of breathing would be best right now, the most energizing or the most calming, and then just watch how the breath responds. And once you've found a rhythm and texture of breathing that does feel good, you can settle into it, soften into it. Once you've set a rhythm of the breath, there's no need to manually continue it. You can step back a bit and just observe it, aware of sensation of breath coming in and coming out, and aware of any tension we may be holding around the process of breathing. Any sense of forcing the breath in or squeezing the breath out. And see if you can consciously relax that tension, allowing the breath to flow freely. And as you remained focused on the sensation of breathing, a sense of directing your awareness towards the breath, question what kind of perception you hold of awareness and breath. Do you perceive them as two separate things? What would happen if you just tried out holding the perception that breath and awareness are one thing, one fluid activity? So it's not awareness watching the breath, but instead you are the breath, experiencing itself. Without the breath, awareness would die away. Without awareness, we wouldn't notice the breath. So they're dependent upon each other. So you could think of them as one fluid activity. Maintaining this breath awareness, you can check in with the forehead and the shoulders, noticing if you're holding tension in that part of the body. Allowing the forehead and the area around the eyes to soften all the way through the in breath, all the way through the out. Allowing breath awareness to flow down into the shoulders, softening them, dropping them. Guiding this breath awareness down into the chest, the area around the heart. Noticing if you're holding any tension there and imagining the breath flowing through the tension. Soothing the heart, opening the chest. And guiding breath awareness down a little further into the stomach, the abdomen. Noticing the sensations in this part of the body. Becoming aware of any patterns of tension. And again, just allowing the breath to flow through the tension, dissolving it away. And as you sensitize yourself to these various sensations throughout the body, you can again question your perception, the perception that you hold around breath awareness and the sensations in the body. Is there a strong distinction between the two? What would happen if, again, we perceive these two things as one? So there's not breath awareness and sensation of the body, but there's simply this full-bodied awareness. Because again, without the breath, awareness would die away, but also the body would die away. Sensation would die away. Without awareness, you wouldn't notice the breath and you wouldn't notice sensations. And without the body, there's nothing for awareness to rest in and nothing to collect the breath. So they could be thought of as one thing instead of three. Disbodied awareness. With this full-bodied awareness, we can allow it to expand all the way to the tips of the fingers and the tips of the toes, all the way up to the crown of the head. And if there's any tension, we can consciously relax it. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly, really filling the body, not just the lungs. Slowly opening the eyes and stretching if needed. Never in a rush to leave the meditation. Taking a minute or two to reflect back on this past session. To any point where there was a particularly strong sense of the breath being nourishing or calming, or a particularly pronounced moment that the mind seemed at ease or steadier. And try to recollect where you were focusing, what you were doing just prior to that state of mind. And just make a note of it. This is how we get to know our minds a little bit better, and how meditation can become a skill, building upon previous sessions. As always, if anyone would like to share how that meditation was for them, if anyone has any questions or comments about the instructions, or if you just want to say hello, you have the live chat right over here or down there. So I wanted to touch on a question. I'm just looking it up. From last week, I mentioned at the beginning the class cut out. The internet cut out near the end of the class. I was unable to answer a question that was asked at the end of the class. Today I kind of based the meditation instructions around that question to an extent. But I'll talk a little bit more about it. So the question was, I have trouble sending breath awareness into my limbs. I can be aware of the sensation in my limbs, but not at the same time as focusing on the breath. Do you have any advice? So last week, I was able to get the first portion of my advice that I typically give for a full-bodied awareness, right? Before the internet cut out, and I'll just very briefly recap that. But basically, one of the things that most heavily determines whether or not I'll be able to maintain a full-bodied awareness is if I was active prior to the meditation. If I went for a walk or something like that to kind of get the blood pumping, the body moving, then it makes it a lot easier when I come into the meditation for there, because circulation's improved, it's easier to feel this sense of movement, right? And what the breath basically is, I talk about the perception of awareness and breath and melding those perceptions together. Taking the opposite approach, what the breath basically is, if you break it down a little further into its components, is it's a sensation that's either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, depending on the condition of our body. And then it's a sense of movement. It's pretty much what the breath is, a sensation and a sense of movement. So that same sensation can be present anywhere in the body. When we think of the breath, it can be really limiting to think of the breath just as the oxygen that comes in and out, the air that comes in and out of the lungs. When we breathe in and oxygen comes into the lungs, it gets processed by the body. It flows through the blood vessels, it animates the nerves. It brings the body to life with each breath. So the breath and breath energy is present well beyond just respiration. It's present throughout the entire body. The more blatant sensation of breathing, the rising and falling, that won't be present throughout the entire body. But a sensation and a sense of movement is present throughout the entire body. Whether you want to think of that movement as on some energetic level, the breath is flowing through the body, or if you want to think of that movement of the fact that the body is pumping blood throughout it. Some people will prefer one over the other. Either way, the sensation of the breath is a lot more than just the rising and falling of the chest or stomach. So when we're focusing on the arm, for example, there's a sensation and a sense of movement. We can think of that as breath. As long as we don't limit our perception, we can think of that as breath, right? So when we're talking about this full body breathing, it's really a sense of being fully within the body and a sense of kind of the sense of movement that happens throughout the body. Basically, in a lot of sense, what we're focusing on is circulation. We're sensitizing ourselves to kind of circulation throughout the body, as well as patterns of tension throughout the body. So one thing that I kind of touched on in the meditation, the way we take awareness and breath and merge them into breath awareness, we can also take breath awareness and the sensations of the body or the body itself and merge them into each other. So we're taking what could be a scattered awareness, where you have awareness watching the breath, and it has one eye on the breath and then it has the other eye on sensations in the body. But if we can collect all of that together as best as we can, it feels a lot less active and a lot less scattering of a meditation if we can collect it together to one pointedness. So that's kind of my advice for that question from last week. Hello, Sherry. Hello, Roberto. And hello, Aaron. Welcome. Glad to have you here for your first time. If at any point anyone has questions on anything that I say, feel free to leave it in the comments and I'll circle back to it. Yeah. So I always, I tend to wait until I press go live before I figure out what I'm going to talk about. It's just a good practice for me because I prefer to almost retentively over prepare for things. So it's a good practice for me to not do that, not prepare at all. That being said, throughout the day or throughout the week, I may have certain things come up that I kind of want to talk about. So Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of anxiety and working with anxiety, um, along with a few other things. And again, if at any point anyone has anything they want to ask about, or even literally just a topic that they'd like me to discuss, feel free. Um, so I'm kind of generally an anxious person. Um, and I've mentioned before in classes that I used to be an angry person, an angry, anxious person. Now I'm an anxious, occasionally angry person, which is a lot better, even if not that different. So this past week, I believe, is on Friday. I'm not super great with timelines, but this past Friday, I got news that a really close friend of mine got hospitalized. Um, that she seems to be doing a bit better now, but it was scary, and it's still scary. And so what happens is that I go into kind of this doomsday mode, right? This kind of like, oh my God, if this happens, if this situation could go this way or this way, and if this bad version happens, then it could go these two ways, and then if that the worst version happens again, and boom, 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 I'm off to like my own personal purgatory of just obsessively focusing on the worst case scenario, right? So what's been really interesting to watch with my mind is kind of seeing it going towards that, and then stopping for a minute and coming back to what's actually happening right now. What do I know right now? Instead of going into if this happens, if that happens, if that happens, blah, blah, blah. Um, because um, there's no real value to mentally doomsday prepping, right? No amount of preparation, or at least the way that we tend to prepare, coming from a place of anxiety, is going to actually make us prepared for if that situation happens, right? No amount of prep really is going to help. Not if that prep is coming from an anxious place. So instead of focusing on, oh, what should I do if this, and this happens, um, you know, whatever it may be, instead I can focus on what I'm doing right now and acknowledging that whatever comes up, the whatever situation arises, it would benefit from me being focused and calm. Whichever way a situation goes, whichever way something happens, I know that if I bring qualities of mind, skillful qualities of mind into that moment, that I would be able to handle that moment, interact in that moment better, um, than if I'm worrying about it constantly and then it does happen. So it's been interesting to watch that. Um, Tonight, I almost did a different style of meditation, which I might talk about a little bit. I don't tend to lead it in this class because it's very specific, um, and very complicated. And we always have new people stopping by, so I try not to. The only time I'll typically lead kind of these more complex, if you want to call them meditations, is when we're meeting in person, and I have a general idea that no one that's come will be too weirded out by it. But I wanted to talk about it a little bit because you could search it on your own if you'd want, especially if you yourself struggle with health issues, or if someone you know is going through some health issues. So there's this practice that I really like called deity yoga. It's a Tibetan practice, It's one of the only Tibetan practices that I've kind of incorporated into my own practice. I'm predominantly a Theravada Buddhist. Um, so Tibetan's different than Theravada, and you can watch a video about the schools of Buddhism. I think we even have one on the channel. Um, so it's a really helpful practice that I found, and it really engages because I have kind of an artistic visual mind. It really engages that aspect of it. So basically, what deity yoga is it's not stretching. Maybe it's stretching your consciousness a little bit, but it's not stretching the body, right? So deity yoga is, you'll often see with Tibetan art, there's a lot of depictions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, very colorful, very ornate. I think, let's see. Like that. So there's a lot of those, and they're called tankas, and they're like a shorthand visual representation of qualities of mind, is one way of thinking of them, or of guardian deities of Buddhist practice. Either way really works, whatever your flavor is, right? So kind of learning the symbolism behind the different symbols that are used within these tankas, and being able to use them as a visual anchor is kind of the core of a deity yoga practice, right? So that one that I just showed there is the one that I've been making an offering to. It's the Medicine Buddha. You can Google Medicine Buddha. You can search on YouTube Medicine Buddha Mantra. That's basically what I've been doing for my friend. So this practice, and it also really helps with the anxiety because it gives me something to do that I believe to be productive towards helping that friend, right? When someone lives on the other side of the continent, it's hard to be there for them in the way that you would like to be there for them, right? When they're going through things like this. So this deity yoga is basically, you take this image, and it could be a Buddha, it could be anything that's sacred to you. It's not mandatory that it's a Buddha or a Bodhisattva. If you love Jesus, you can imagine Jesus. It's more about this process, right? And this process is, if there's a mantra to recite, you can recite a mantra, and you imagine this being, in this case, the Medicine Buddha. You imagine them kind of in front of you and above you. You know, you have your eyes closed, you're reciting mantra, and you think about the symbolism and the meaning and the qualities of mind that they represent. And as you recite the mantra, you imagine this being becoming like pure energy. And then you imagine it kind of absorbing this light, this energy, absorbing into you. And this is done in segments, just like with loving kindness meditation. You'd spend like 5 minutes on this, 5 minutes on this, etc. So you imagine them becoming light and kind of suffusing into you. And then you imagine you becoming this being. And it's really, for me, it's really helpful for the anxiety because, one, it's believed within Buddhist practice that chanting to the Medicine Buddha, channeling the properties of the Medicine Buddha is very healing, and you can dedicate and direct that healing towards someone you know who's suffering or ill or whatever it may be. It also helps with the anxiety that happens because it has this way of strengthening the mind and strengthening the heart, because it's kind of like you've recognized what qualities that this image represents, and through this meditation it's almost like you're intending the heart to give rise to those qualities within yourself. So it can be really helpful. Again, it can be a little esoteric, so that's why I don't lead the actual meditation on it. here. But this quality of kind of this being or the symbolism fusing into you, and then you embodying those qualities. In other words, you becoming them is you embodying those qualities. It can be really helpful. And sometimes the meditation or the practice um, within my mind is lacking a little bit of the oomph that it needs when I'm practicing. So the deity yoga, whether or not it's energetically providing this oomph, it is psychologically providing an oomph. It energizes the practice. It kind of gives life back to it, gives fuel to it. So it's something that I find really beneficial. I just wanted to share that with you guys. When I close tonight, I'll close with 3 repetitions of the Medicine Buddha mantra, and then probably my regular dedication of merit chant. But yeah, just wanted to share that. So Sherry said, that is me exactly. One small thing can really set off the catastrophic cognitions. Sounds like a punk band. Anxiety is the worst. Meditation definitely helps in the long run. Yeah. The interesting thing is, so oftentimes people will struggle a lot with anxiety, and then their friends and things like that will be like, oh, I've been coming to the Buddhist temple for a while. I've been doing this meditation thing for a while. You should try it out here. Come with me, etc. The thing with the meditation practice is it's really hard to try to start developing the practice when you're in the middle of a panic attack or an anxiety attack. And, sometimes the panic attack and anxiety attack doesn't just last, a few minutes or a couple hours like people think. Sometimes it lasts months. Sometimes you're in a state of panic or mania or whatever it may be for very long periods of time. So we can be gentle with ourselves. But so meditation, this is something that I always stress, is meditation will help with anxiety, but it's not a quick fix. Just like you mentioned here, it helps in the long run. It's something that slowly over time, like drops of water in a bucket, you don't really notice the benefits of the meditation. The real benefits of it, you notice some short-term benefits, but you don't really notice the real benefits of it until that bucket starts to overflow. The first time we meditate, it might be really enjoyable, it might be interesting, but it pales in comparison to the quality that the meditation gains over time from consistent practice. Drop by drop, water fills the bucket. And as long as we're putting drops in the bucket faster than the water's evaporating, we're in good shape. And if not, we can be gentle with ourselves. But it is this slow accumulation. Never kicking ourselves because it's not working or anything like that. The progress is slow. And in many senses, it's so slow that it's hard to even notice. That's why I'll often recommend keeping some kind of record or journal or something. I didn't do that when I started practice, but I have this wonderful little thing called Facebook memories that come up to show me how crappy I used to be, how angry I used to be, how rude I used to be. So it's really interesting to see that and to see the change of character that meditation has caused and the ease that it's brought into my life. Because even though I'm still anxious and I still occasionally get angry and all those kind of things, it pales in comparison to how it used to be. Now it's that anxiety or anger arises in the mind and it stays for a while, and I kind of watch it. Like maybe I taste it a little bit more than I should. And then eventually I know that eventually it will fade away. It used to be that anger or anxiety wouldn't arise in the mind, they would become the mind. They would terraform the mind. They would terrorize my mind, and they would take the wheel. Now I can see them. Many times they're just as present as they were before, but I know that I don't have to give them power. I don't have to reinforce them. I don't have to operate from them. They can just be there doing whatever they want to do. I don't need to get involved with it. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got for tonight. If anyone has any questions, anything like that, I'd be happy to answer them or try. The Wi-Fi connection allowing. Okay, so I think we'll close with as I mentioned, the Medicine Buddha mantra and a dedication of merit. As I'm reciting the chant, if you want, you can imagine someone that you know who is struggling with their health at this time, or if you yourself are struggling with your health at this time, you can imagine you can dedicate the chant to yourself. That's fine. Um, Nothing wrong with that. We all got to take care of ourselves. Yeah. So if you want to just, you can call to mind someone who maybe you know who is ill at this time, or anything like that. And you can dedicate the kind of good qualities that any sense of ease you gained from the meditation, um, any sense of ease or calm that you may have got from the talk or anything like that. You kind of dedicate that to this person who's suffering or this person who's ill. And that's a dedication of merit. So that's what we'll end with here. If comfortable, please join palms. Om Namo Bhagavate Vaishajaya Guru Vaidya Brahma Ranjaya Tagataya Arahate Samyaksham Bodhaya Teyata Om Bekaji Bekaji Maha Bekaji Bekaji Rajaya Samugate Shwaha Om Namo Bhagavate Vaishajaya Guru Vaidya Brahma Ranjaya Tagataya Arahate Samyaksham Bodhaya Teyata Om Bekaji Bekaji Maha Bekaji Bekaji Rajaya Samugate Shwaha Om Namo Bhagavate Vaishajaya Guru Vaidya Brahma Ranjaya Tagataya Arahate Samyaksham Bodhaya Teyata Om Bekaji Bekaji Maha Bekaji Bekaji Rajaya Samugate Shwaha Metta Karuna Mudita Peka Sangha Teya Chetasa Chaturisam Bharatwa Viharati Samabunaro Pavena Sabadamaro Pavena Sabasangharo Pavena Sote Hantu Nirantaram. May any merit gained from tonight's meditation and discussion be dedicated to Ashley in her time of healing, and to Eric and his family who suffer at this time. May they all be free from illness. May they all be at ease. May all beings in all directions be healthy, safe, and at ease. And may we all be healthy, safe, and at ease. Good night, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your night. I'll see you next week.